for coming again in such great numbers. The first seminar today is on working in Japan. I myself graduated from university 8 years ago and set sail for Japan to work out there. And the fact that I've remained there ever since is probably testament to the fact that Japan is such a great country to live and work in. Today we're going to have two speakers talking about working in Japan. The first speaker is Kiko Hill from Disco. They're a job recruitment company that specialise in placements in Japan. So Kiko will be talking about the working environment in Japan and the kind of companies that are looking to recruit people from overseas to work with them. Then the second half of today's presentation will be about the JET programme, which is a programme for people who have graduated from university that allows them to experience Japan through teaching English or working for one of the local governments out in Japan. So let's get things underway with Kiko from Disco, who will be talking about working in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Welcome to this seminar on working in Japan. My name's Kiko, and I've personally been working in Japan. I started working in Japan this October. So, welcome. In this seminar, I'd basically like to talk to you about the various work opportunities and experiences that are available for international graduates in Japan, as well as the various ways in which you can go about finding work there. So, just to tell you a little bit about myself to begin with, I personally studied Japanese at university, at the University of Manchester for 4 years, which included a year of study abroad in Japan during the third year. So during that year, I spent half a year in a place called Yamagata, which is up in the north of Japan. It's in the Japanese countryside in the mountains. It's absolutely beautiful. A lot of people don't realise, but 70% of Japan is actually mountains and countryside and so on. It's a really stunning place to be. And then I spent the second half of my year in Osaka, which is obviously Japan's second largest city and is very definitely one of the loudest, most fun and exciting places I've ever lived. So, essentially, as I said, I've started working in Japan. I graduated from university this June, and as of October, I've been working at Disco, which is headquartered in Tokyo, where I've been living and working for the last month and a half. So anyone who's interested in obviously studying or then going on to live and work in Japan, I've personally been through the process of finding work in Japan literally in the last matter of months. So any questions that people may have, either at the end of the presentation, or if we don't have time, at the Disco booth, which is in the exhibiting room next to the university exhibiting rooms, please feel free to come and ask me anything. So, why work in Japan, and what kind of experiences and opportunities are there available for people in Japan? Well, the answer is there are in fact many. As many Japanese companies continue to globalize their business operations, they're increasingly looking to international graduates that have foreign language skills and a global mindset and so forth, that they can bring into their companies to help use to reinforce their companies worldwide and so on. I have here, just to begin with, a quick video to show you. This video is a short clip of 3 of my workmates from our company in Tokyo. All 4 of us have actually started working at our company in the last few months, so we're all quite new to living and working in Japan. And this video will hopefully just give you a quick insight into what it's actually like for people over there.
My name is Johanna, and I'm actually from Finland. I'm 26 years old, and now I've been working here in Japan, in Tokyo, about 3 months. I came to Japan first time in 2008 to be an exchange student, actually. And then I just fall in love with the country. And when I went back to Finland, I was like, no, this is like boring, I want to go back to Tokyo. I graduated this spring. Yeah, just living in Tokyo, I just love the country. I love Tokyo, so that's the thing for me, I guess.
My name's Clint. I'm from America. I've been working here in Japan for a couple months now. And my first introduction to Japan was actually coming here on a mission for a church. And it was just random. They chose me to go to Japan. I came out here for about a year and a half, and I kind of fell in love with the country, fell in love with the culture, started learning the language, and it was really fun. very lively town here, very, 30 million people in the rural area of Tokyo, suburban area of Tokyo. Like, I never thought I was going to end up in Japan, ever in my entire life. I come from a small place in America called Utah, in the mountains. And honestly, I think the more you get out into the world and the more you interact with people, the more you see people and experience cultures, the more you're going to want to get out of your little shell that you're used to and go try something.
Hi, my name is Evan, and I'm from Salt Lake City, in America. I'm 27, and I've been in Japan for the last 5 years. I originally came here a little bit before that on a study abroad program. I was a Japanese major at the time. Coming over here and studying, and I'm actually experiencing Tokyo, experiencing Japan. When I came to the end of my study abroad program, I really wanted to go back. What really got me was Tokyo as a whole. It's a great place to live. There's always something to do. And yeah, I'm still here 6 years later, so something must have happened. If I was to give any advice to folks looking to come over here, probably that would be get some practical experience before you do. But if you're a student, start thinking about internships, start thinking about summer jobs, something like that. And that's really a good and solid quick in the door.
Find out everything possible you can find about Japan in Japan, about the schedule, and about different companies, what kind of companies there are.
I would say definitely get out of your comfort zone and try something.
So that there would have hopefully given you a bit of a glimpse into the kinds of people that go and work in Japan and what led them to Japan and what it's like actually living and working over there. For me personally, I found the experience of working in Japan so far to be absolutely amazing. I mean, as a country, I think it's definitely one of the most socially and culturally diverse places that you could ever be. And there's all the kind of modern, high-tech, new sci-fi aspect of things and Japanese young pop culture and everything. And there's that combined with the old Japanese traditions and customs, which they still really value and actually have very much showing in their day-to-day lives and routines and so forth. So it's really an incredible place to be. So what kind of job opportunities are there actually for international graduates in Japan? These next two charts here show the results of an online survey that asked close to 1,000 Japanese companies whether they had or were planning on recruiting international graduates into their companies in 2011 and also the predicted results for 2012. So as you can see, it's predicted that in 2012, up to a quarter of Japanese companies were actually actively looking to recruit international graduates into their companies. Like I said, the reason for this is as Japanese companies continue to want to globalize and intensify their market operations overseas, they're increasingly looking to foreign international graduates that they can bring to their companies who are able to bring a new range of skills and ways of thinking and so forth. I think as well, especially if you're an international graduate from the UK or any other English-speaking country, or if you have English as a fluent language, that combined with fluent Japanese as a second language is especially desirable for Japanese companies, essentially, and the possibilities are very, very wide. The number of international graduates in Japan of international students in Japan, has also continued to increase over the years. This graph, although in Japanese, shows the trend in the number of international graduates or students in Japan between 1984 to 2011. There are 4 different lines on the graph, but there's the top line at the top there, which shows the overall total number of international students in Japan over these last few years. There's a dip in the middle, which is the result of the Asian financial crisis of 1997, in which obviously the economic climate in Asia was very bad, and the Japanese Ministry of Education actually they restricted their visa regulations, making it harder for international students to get into Japan with visa access. But the regulations have since changed, as you can see. There are far more international students in Japan now. The dip at the top again, there have been a few slight decreases. This is the combined result of the 2008 global economic crisis, which impacted upon the Japanese economy as well as the March 2011 earthquake and tsunami that hit Japan. But overall, the total number of international students in Japan has roughly doubled over the last 10 years. With this, it's probably no surprise then that the trend in visa applications to work in Japan has also continued to steadily increase. This graph, it doesn't in fact show all the visa applications to work in Japan. What this shows is all the visa applications to work in Japan which were applied for by individuals that were in Japan on student visas and then had their visa statuses changed to work visas, allowing them to stay and work there. So essentially, people such as yourselves, if you may be interested in going and working in Japan, studying in Japan on a student visa, and then perhaps changing your student visa status to a work visa, this graph represents those who have done that. Again, you can see in 2008, the global economic crisis did hit Japanese companies pretty hard. A lot of them resorted to cutting their personnel costs and so forth by reducing their hiring numbers. But since the improvement in the economic situation, since 2010, Japanese companies are once more putting efforts into market expansion and increasing their hiring numbers, making the prospect of working there in years to come very promising indeed. Another thing that I should probably mention, one of the nice things about job hunting as a new graduate in Japan is that there are a lot of Japanese companies that put a lot of effort into specifically trying to hire new graduates over mid-career professionals, for example. And the reason for this is many Japanese companies believe that by hiring new graduates that haven't had experience of having worked in other companies for long periods of time, they're able to cultivate workers that are able to go on to acquire the right executive and managerial skills in keeping with the company philosophy and morals and mission and so forth. And they want these people to then go on and potentially be the leaders, the future leaders of their company. So job hunting as a new graduate in Japan is definitely an advantage compared to, say, trying to do it in England. Next here, I have some further results of the same online survey that I talked about earlier. This question asked the companies what were their specific reasons for wanting to recruit international students into their companies. The answers have been split into humanities-based and science-based companies, but as you can see, there isn't really much difference between them at all. The most popular answer by far for both categories was to secure exceptionally talented individuals, which just goes to show that a lot of Japanese companies already consider individuals that have gone over to Japan and are trying to find work there to be exceptionally talented with a wide range of skills and language abilities and so forth that regular Japanese graduates don't have. The next top four answers also all generally focus on the benefits of having an international graduate who was able to offer a different range of language skills and mindset and so on. And they want those skills to allow the company to use those to strengthen their positions both nationally within Japan as well as globally overseas. I myself found as well on a personal level, Japanese companies, they really, really do appreciate and want your skills as an international graduate. One of the things that I was worried about when I started working over there was that I knew that Japanese business and business etiquette and manners and so on were really important, but I hadn't personally been educated that well in them. I didn't really know how to behave like a Japanese businesswoman and so on. So I was really paranoid before starting. But then on my first day at work, one of the first things that they said to me was that they didn't hire me because they wanted me to become a Japanese worker and act and behave in the same way as a Japanese office lady or whatever. They wanted me because I was a foreign international graduate, and they wanted me to bring those skills to the table, essentially. So that's another nice thing to bear in mind, is that they really do appreciate your skills and what you have to offer as an international graduate. Next here, the same online survey again. This question looked at what was it that companies specifically looked for in individuals when they looked to hire international graduates. Turns out that communication skills, Japanese language ability, and vitality, those three were all in the top four top answers for both humanities-based and science-based companies. Generally speaking, I think the three main areas that Japanese companies generally tend to focus on when looking to recruit international graduates are one, one's personality, individuality, and character; two, one's academic skill and technical ability; and three, one's ability to deal with different cultural and social settings. So obviously one's personality, that refers to one's sense of values and one's way of seeing things and approaching different situations. Japanese companies tend to focus, they form their own kind of set of values and philosophy and morals and so on. And then what they want are individuals who understand those morals and philosophy and are able to make a positive contribution to the company working environment. So it's important, if you are to maybe try and find work in Japan and apply to a Japanese company, to do a bit of research and homework beforehand to get at least a little bit of an understanding as to the kind of company that they are, as well as what they expect of their employees. Academic skill and technical ability, that's pretty self-explanatory. Companies are obviously looking for individuals that are able to meet the required performance level in any given field. The definition of a highly qualified employee, that varies depending on the company as well as the department and the position for which you apply. But overall, they just want people that are able to meet the required performance level. And then the ability to deal with different cultural and social settings. Like I said, I found that when I went to Japan, they didn't expect me to conform and be Japanese, etc. But it's also important, out of common courtesy, just to make sure that you have an understanding of Japanese culture and the way that they do things, so as not to offend people when you go over there. So these three areas, I'd say, are the most important things to look out for when looking for work in Japan. However, I also think it would be fair to say that the single most important thing is the first one, your individuality and character and personality and so forth. Companies really do value what you have to bring as an individual character. I think no matter how good your academic record may be and so on, a Japanese company will not hire you if they don't feel that you are the right fit for their company. So they think that technical skill and ability and so forth, that can be learned, whereas your personality, that is already kind of set the way that you are. Next, I'd just like to give you a quick breakdown of the structure of the Japanese business market, including the numbers and size of companies and so on. So there are around 5,800 Japanese companies that have capital of over 1 billion yen. For those of you that don't know, 1 billion yen is roughly equivalent to 8 million pounds. These companies make up just 0.3% of the total number of Japanese companies, meaning that 99.7% of Japanese companies actually have capital of less than 1 billion yen. The reason I'm telling you this is obviously because there are many major brand Japanese companies that are extremely globally dominant in what they do. You have especially the manufacturing companies like Sony and Panasonic and Nintendo and loads of car companies, etc. They are all obviously extremely significant and important in the Japanese business market, but they make up such a small proportion of the total number of Japanese companies. So when looking for work in Japan, it's obviously important not to disregard smaller companies that may not be so famous and you may not have heard of, because this is actually where the majority of business opportunities in Japan actually lie. If we look as well at where international graduates in Japan typically find work, you can see that 47.5%, so nearly half of them find work in companies that have less than 50 employees, so really very, very small companies. And around 3/4 find work in companies that have less than 1,000 employees. So again, the point that I'm essentially trying to get across here is that most job opportunities, not just for international graduates, but for people in Japan, lie with smaller companies that may not be so famous worldwide. I think another thing to think about when concerning the size of a Japanese company is that as a general trend, you're a lot more likely to be assigned a job or work role that better reflects your abilities as an international graduate if you work for a smaller company as opposed to if you work for a larger company. There are two main reasons for this. The first reason is because, one, at a smaller company, the number of employees that they actually have is obviously a lot less. So the focus on each individual employee is therefore a lot more, and they're a lot more likely to acknowledge what you individually have to offer the company and have expectations of you as an individual. And the second reason is that overall, it tends to be the case that smaller Japanese companies seem to be a lot more likely to specifically recruit international graduates with the intention of using them for international business assignments. If you think about the fact that a lot of the larger Japanese companies, they're already very globally dominant and so forth, and they have overseas offices and people working in branch offices all over the world and so on. A lot of smaller companies that aren't as big or globally renowned yet, they have yet to do that. So they're wanting even more to recruit international graduates into their companies that they can then use for global business operations and so forth. In terms of the actual job types that a lot of international graduates in Japan typically get, I have here a table which shows the statistics of the jobs that international graduates in Japan between 2004 and 2011 have got, as well as the industries into which they fall. Again, This table shows the results for individuals that were in Japan originally on student visas and then had their visa statuses changed to work visas, allowing them to stay and work there full time. As you can see, around 3/4 of international graduates in Japan find work in companies outside of the manufacturing industry, with the most common single job type being commerce and trade. This leaves around 1/4 of international students who find work within the manufacturing industry. Obviously, you can see there are variations between the types of jobs that international students tend to get. However, what I also hope you can see from this is that there isn't just one type of job that international students in Japan get. There's a wide range of industries and services that you can actually fall into. This table is representative of international graduates in Japan from all countries. Whereas if you were, for example, to look at job types for international graduates that are from the UK or English-speaking countries, the most common job type is, in fact, language instructor. Obviously, a good example would be the JET program, a representative of who you'll be hearing from after this. But in native English combined with Japanese as a second language is really, really a very desirable feature or attribute for international students to have. To work in Japan also, I should mention, as you've probably gathered, you need to get a work visa. It's not permitted for any foreign national in Japan to engage in any kind of paid activity on a tourist or student visa. So it's important to make sure that if you do wish to work in Japan, you get the correct documents in order and so forth before you start working over there. On the Japanese embassy website, it says that it takes between 2 and 3 months from start to finish to process a work visa. Mine personally, when I got my work visa processed this summer, it took just over 1 month. So I think on average, they tend to take around 2 months from start to finish. So if you give yourself that amount of time to apply for a visa, that's usually enough. This slide here shows you a list of some of the events that take place in Japan throughout the year that are specifically geared at international job seekers in Japan. So as you can see, there are loads of different events. For those of you that can't read Japanese, a lot of the event titles are things such as Job Hunting Seminar for International Students or Global Career Seminar for International Students and so forth. And these are all specifically aimed at international students who are trying to find work in Japan. So you can see just from this how in demand international students are for companies that are wanting to hire global human resources. Which brings me to the final part of my presentation, in which I'd just like to introduce to you the company for which I work and have been working for the last month and a half in Japan, called Disco. So who are Disco? We are essentially a Japanese human resources firm headquartered in Tokyo. And one of the things that we specialize in is career support and educational marketing for international job seekers inside as well as outside of Japan. The name DISCO is an acronym for the Development of Information Services for Career Opportunities. And what we essentially do is connect talented individual job seekers, specifically with Japanese and English language abilities, with companies that are looking to specifically recruit individuals that have those skills. We offer a wide range of services, but one of the most significant things that we run is our very own job fairs that are called Disco Career Forums. And that's the photograph of one of our career forums there. Our career forums, they're essentially a series of internationally recognized job fairs that are specifically aimed at Japanese and English bilingual job seekers. This photograph here is of our Boston Career Forum, 2011. Our Boston Career Forum is the oldest of our career forums and is in fact the single largest job fair for Japanese and English bilinguals in the world. In our Boston Career Forum 2012, a total of 190 companies, both Japanese and foreign, took part. They made the effort to go all the way over to Boston specifically to recruit international job seekers that had accumulated there. In response to this, there are around 4,500 international job seekers that came to our Boston Career Forum, knowing that they could meet face-to-face with companies that were looking to recruit human resources with those range of skills. One of the things that sets our career forums apart from many regular job fairs is that you can actually take part in one-on-one official interviews with recruiting companies at these job fairs. So as you can see here from the photograph, you have all the blue booths in the middle. These are all the company booths in which you have the regular things that take place at job fairs. So companies kind of set up base, and you can go and talk to people and ask questions, and they give company presentations and so forth. And all of these white booths along the sides here, they're actually our interview booths, and their one-on-one, face-to-face formal interviews take place, which often do quite lead to like official job offers for individuals that take part in the events. So they're really, really amazing opportunities for any individual that is looking to work in Japan or has Japanese and English language abilities. We conduct career forums, not just in Boston. We have several that we conduct in various places around the world. And one of the places that we conduct them is, in fact, here in London. The London Career Forum takes place every year in June. Our June 2013 London Career Forum takes place on Saturday the 8th and Sunday the 9th of June, so it's over a weekend. And it's in Earls Court Conference Centre here in London. To take part in the event, what you have to do is you have to pre-register online at the website there, and then you can come along to the event. Obviously, you can check to see what companies will be taking part in the event before you come along. So if you wish to take one-on-one interviews with any company, you can do preparation beforehand. Or if not, you're free to just come along as well and just walk around and meet companies and see what it's like to actually maybe work in Japan and see what they have to say and so forth. I myself was actually recruited by Disco at this year's London Career Forum, so 2012. And my 3 workmates that were all in the video that you saw earlier, they were recruited at Disco's various different career forums. Clinton, he was recruited in Boston, Johanna in Tokyo, and I think Evan in Tokyo as well. So these career forums really do offer the opportunity to just go along and potentially get an official job offer there. So yes, which brings me to the end of my part of the seminar. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks very much, Kiko. Kiko will be at the Disco booth in the room next to the main hall for the remainder of the event. So if you'd like to speak directly with Kiko or her colleague, Yuzo Kawamura, then please head over to the booth after this seminar's finished. Okay, for the next speaker, we've got Philip Liu, who's going to speak about the JET program. So if you just bear with me whilst I change the presentation. Yeah, maybe if you could. Yeah, 220 is fine.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So, my name is Philip, and I'm a former JET participant on the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. Can I have a show of hands? Does anyone, who knows about the JET program, first of all? Quite a few of you. And who has applied for the next intake, 2013? Okay. So the next intake is for 2013, and these participants will be going over in August. And the deadline for the application process is at the end of this month. So if you are applying, then please get your skates on. It's quite an arduous process having to apply for the JET program. So there are lots of documents that you have to get. But you can go to our website, jet-uk.org, which will show up later. And that's where you'll find the application form and all the information you need. But in this presentation, I don't have very long, and there is quite a lot to get through. But I'm just going to talk about my experiences in Japan. I was in Japan for 2 years, and I just came back in August. So I went over in 2010 after I graduated. I'll talk about eligibility and applying, and I'll also talk about what you'll find when you get there and what to expect. Okay. So this is Japan, as you can see. I was based in Hyogo, which is this is Tokyo, Osaka. Hyogo is this prefecture here. And I was based in the southeast end of the prefecture. You could be placed anywhere in Japan, except Tokyo. We don't send anyone to Tokyo because the aim of the JET program is to internationalize. And we send people over into rural areas, largely rural areas, but also very small cities where there aren't many foreigners. So unfortunately, Tokyo is off. If you do wish to go to Tokyo, then maybe ask Kiko and see what she can do for you. So as you see, there's quite a lot of diversity in Japan. In the north, you have Hokkaido, which is very snowy, very cold as well. And you have Okinawa, should be right here. Should be right here. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Okinawa should be right in the southwestern.
Or just stay there. That would be the,
All right.
the most straightforward.
I'm sorry, I have to stay here. Right. Okinawa is in the southwestern side.
I'll point. Yeah.
Okay. Just off where Tom's finger is, that is Okinawa. And it's as you might already know, it's a chain of islands that are quite tropical, and you might find snakes there. And American soldiers. But I was in Western Japan, which is Hyogo, Kansai area. You could potentially be placed anywhere, and in the application, you can state a preference, but unfortunately, we can't guarantee where you'd be placed. You could be placed on an island somewhere on this map, or you could be placed in a massive city, like Osaka. All right. What is JET? It's Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. We started in 1987, and it was started by the Japanese government. This is the 26th year this year, and what we do mainly is to send people, graduates, to teach English in Japanese schools. Most people tend to be placed in junior high schools, which is from 11 to 15 years old, or in senior high schools, which is from 15 to 18. And I was placed in 2 senior high schools. So yes, there have been a lot of people who've been on the JET program, and our alumni is well over 50,000 by now. In the UK alone, it's over 10,000. And lots of people who've been on the JET program for maybe 2 years have come back and maybe found themselves in the Foreign Office or anything Japan related. So it's really up to you what you want to learn from this experience. Some people have gone on to work in Japanese food or gone into a job related to Japan, maybe in a large corporation that might need Japanese people with experience working with Japanese people. This is a very good option for people who aren't quite sure what they wanted to do, but maybe they want to go to Japan and see what happens. Maybe you'll find true love there, or maybe you'll find your interests in what you want to do in life. So it's a very good package, if I could say. Maybe, what Kiko was saying was with all these visa applications, all the time it takes to get there, and the money you might need to start off. With the JET program, it's very much a package where we provide return flights if you finish your contract. We sort out accommodation for you, so you don't have to find anywhere. And visas we definitely will sort out for you. So if you want a fairly easy way of getting to Japan and teach English, then this might be for you. So the one position I was talking about, the ALT position, is the one where you teach English in high schools and junior high schools. And the CIR position, the Coordinator for International Relations, This position is for people who are quite good at Japanese, written and spoken, because you'll be placed in local government offices where you might have to help establish international ties with various countries in English and Japanese, which might be a good role for you if you want to get experience in local government or in government in general. And this is more of an office-based role, so it's not really teaching. I'll talk about these two positions in detail in a bit. Okay, so we have the assistant language teacher. Of the people who did just apply, can I ask, with a show of hands, who applied for the ALT position? Okay, and the CIR. Okay, so I'll talk about both. So the ALT, you'll be placed, as I said, in elementary, junior, or senior level schools. So compulsory education starts from 6 years old in Japan. So that's the youngest kind of students you'll be teaching, up to 18. I'll just stress that you are an assistant language teacher. You won't be on your own in the classroom. You'll be with a Japanese teacher, a qualified Japanese teacher, who will be standing next to you and helping you conduct the class. If you don't speak Japanese, it's very helpful to have this person next to you because things can go wrong. Things can go wrong, and you need a Japanese person just to keep order, especially if they're quite unruly. So you'll be an assistant language teacher. There'll be 2 teachers in the classroom of potentially 40 students, up to 40 students. So it's probably about half the size of this room, the classroom that I was teaching in. And you'd have 40 students in rows, and you'd be standing in front, obviously. Your role would also to be promoting internationalization and cultural exchange. This is where the JET program might be a bit different from other schemes that send you to Japan to teach English. You're a civil servant, basically, of the local government, and you'll be representing the country that you come from, which will be the UK. So you'd be ambassadors for the UK in that sense. Local people might base their ideas of the UK on you, being the only foreigner in the village. So it's important that we have very responsible people on the JET program. The level of English in Japan is admittedly not as high as we'd like it to be. And this is something that one of the big reasons why the JET program was established was so that we could send people to rural areas and encourage young people to not only just learn English, but also to think about the wider world, to think about maybe Japan's place in the world, where you could conduct business with foreigners and maybe learn from foreigners. So in a given year, there might be about 6,000 jets right across Japan. And you might also be asked to participate in extracurricular activities. If you have a particular interest, maybe music or football or tennis, you might want to participate in after-school clubs, which are very important in school culture, Japanese school culture, compared to the UK. Almost everyone is required to join a club after school. So you'll often see students coming home from school at 9 p.m, getting the train at 9 p.m. because they've just finished flower arranging class or they're preparing for the next basketball match. I wasn't in a particular club, but I did move around a lot within the school just to see everyone. So one day I'd be doing softball, one day I'd be doing volleyball, one day I'd be too tired to do anything. So you're free to you're free to not go to a club if you're too tired, but it's a great way to meet students and get to know them. And we do highly encourage that you do that, because even though you're in a classroom, it's quite a formal setting, so you don't really get to know the kids, the children, that way. So it's highly recommended that you do something that they're interested in, and you do it with them, and it's quite fun as well. I'll just move on to the CIR position. I'm sorry, I don't know how much time I have. The CIR position, so this is the one that's based in local government, where you have to have the equivalent of N2 in the JLPT, the Japanese Language Proficiency Test. You don't actually have to have it, but you need to have the equivalent level. If you are invited to interview for this position, you'd be interviewed by staff at the Embassy of Japan who would quiz you on your level of Japanese. It's that kind of level. So one thing you have to do is welcome guests from abroad, not just from English-speaking countries. They might be from Mexico or Peru or Brazil. But obviously, since English is the language of diplomacy, you're safe. You can just use English. But you would have to interpret for the government official who's welcoming them. It might be a sister city initiative based on trade or something like that. And you would have to learn all the vocabulary in Japanese and make sure that you're interpreting everything right. Okay, there's a lot of editing as well as translating and interpreting. You would also be advising Japanese people on what they could do outside of Japan. So you might be advising them on what they could do for opportunities outside of Japan. Yeah, I've said that. And there are some times when you would be assisting with English language instruction. This might be for the actual government officials that you're working with in the local government, or it might be that you're sent to a few schools as an ALT, just to see what English teaching is like in those schools. But that's not most of your job. The job would mostly be in government offices. Okay, so opportunities on the JET program. Obviously, it'd be a chance to work and live in a fascinating country, a country that's very far from here. It takes 12 hours to get over there. I was really jet lagged when I got there. You can immerse yourself in a country that's very unique. Since you're here, so you must have an interest in Japan. You probably know that there are so many things that you could get into. There's manga and anime, of course, but there's also food, and someone just said sushi over there. Sushi is very good. Sushi is the best in Japan, which is not surprising. It's very fresh. The naked people there, they went to something called the Naked Man Festival, which I didn't do. It's where you get very, very drunk on sake and you have to run around a lot in the cold. And it's really cold. It's in February, I think. They have to, I can't remember the details, but they have to, there's a sort of a stick where they have to run around, and all thousands and thousands of men are running to get the stick, and there's a prize. Do you know what the prize is? What's that, sir? What's the prize? You don't know the prize. There's a big prize. It's a lot of money. And that's why they're doing this, why they're naked and drunk and running around. Learning a new language. Japanese, as you already probably know, is a very difficult language to learn for English speakers. And this might be a good in for you if you want to do something like the Foreign Office. The Foreign Office is very keen to have applicants who understand difficult languages, because then they could ask you to learn Arabic and Chinese as well on the side. So learning Japanese, it's a very worthwhile endeavour, but it is very difficult. I'm not fluent in my 2 years there, but I'm fairly decent. I can follow a conversation and contribute a few things in the conversation. Widen your circle of friends. You'll make Japanese friends, I hope, if you get to Japan. And also with other JET participants. It's not just the UK that JET operates in. There's also the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Trinidad, Jamaica, lots of countries, China, Korea. So the JET program invites people from 40 countries to come to Japan, and it's very international. I made friends with people from all over, not just Japan. take up a Japanese hobby or pastime, you might discover that you're really good at calligraphy and you might be a master in it. Oh, and karaoke is mandatory, actually. You must sing. At schools, at your school, there'll be something called enkais, which involves alcohol, and it involves people just loosening up. I find that Japanese people tend to be quite tense in the workplace. So, but when they party, they really party. They really loosen up. So it's often at these enkais where you really get to know your teachers. So responsibilities. There are responsibilities. It's a professional job. It's not something that you can do half-heartedly. So you'll need to create ideas and materials in your role as assistant language teacher. In my school, I was given free rein to create my own lessons. So I was given 15 minutes to just create something. And I did it on my own. And I had to learn as I went. I didn't really have any teaching experience before I came on this. I studied Chinese and politics, so I didn't really have any teaching experience. So you just learn as you go. You're dropped into it, but you have a month to adapt. When I say that, I mean you arrive in August and you'll start teaching in September. So you have a month to create a self-introduction lesson. That's quite important. Self-introductions are very important in Japanese culture. So you'll have to create a lesson based on that, and you just have to get to grips with how the school works and who you'll be teaching, what you'll be teaching, and that sort of thing. So you have a month to adapt and get to know your job. It can be quite disconcerting because you've just landed in a strange country, but it's important that when you get there, you just take your time. Don't just expect everything to just work perfectly as you get there. You might have a lot of frustrations when you get there. Like the water might not work in your house, as I found when I got there. So you'll have to negotiate with Japanese plumbers and tell them what the problem is. Just sort of point, say it doesn't work. Sorry, just going off on a bit of a tangent here. Elementary school. On the application form, you can state a preference that you want to teach 6 to 11-year-olds. And they are trying to push JETs into teaching younger children, as English language teaching is now mandatory in primary school to a certain extent. Take adult conversation classes. You might have to teach Japanese adults English as well, depending on where you are, what you're asked to do from your employer. Speech competitions. This might be quite an odd thing to do and think about, but speech competitions are very popular in Japan. I had to judge one, and it was very formal. There were lots of very nervous students who were sitting in the room, and there was me and another judge, and the children would have to stand here, and the pressure on them is actually. I wouldn't like to do it myself, but they have to speak. The aim is to speak as perfectly as they can, and they win a prize at the end. And there's a lot of time and effort that goes into preparing the children before they go and do these speech competitions. So you might be asked to do this. Organise English-related events in the school community. There might be some international festivals that you might participate in. One friend I knew, she's Welsh, and she baked Welsh cakes at her international festival. Be involved in or responsible for an extracurricular club. Lots of ALTs are asked to take charge of the English club at their school because they are the native English speakers, so it makes sense. So you might have to create some activities for them after school, English related, or it might be watching films or playing Scrabble or things like this. So you might have to take charge of a club as well as your duties teaching as an ALT. I said this before, JET program is an opportunity for the UK and Japan to develop grassroots relations. And this means that, well, there are diplomats, obviously, who try and smooth everything over, but there's also, in local areas, you would have to, you are the foreigner, so people would base their ideas of what foreigners do and what foreigners are on you. So you have to be quite a responsible person. You're also a public servant. You're a civil servant employed by the local government. So you also have to conduct yourself in that sense too. Challenges. Of course, there are language and cultural barriers. Sorry, this is quite a lot. There's quite a lot to get through, so I'll just get through this quite quickly. Lots of cultural barriers that you'll have to get through. And this might lead to a lot of frustration when you're there. We're looking for people who are quite resilient when they get there. Everything won't be perfect. So it's up to you to make sure that you're adaptable and flexible. And in the application process, you need to be able to demonstrate this. Maybe you've lived abroad, somewhere else, or you can show that you're quite a responsible person. Maybe. Just go through all this. Don't worry, there is a large support network. There are other JETs, likely to be other JETs in your local area, who are obviously fluent in English, and if you have any problems, which you probably will do, it's very good to talk to friends who are fluent in English. You'll have Japanese friends, of course, but they might not be able to understand quite how you're feeling based on maybe it's a cultural difference, or it might be just that the language barrier. You can't really get through to how you're feeling, maybe. Benefits to JET program. Well, as I said, it's more of a package. So you do get a return flight. You do get the visa sorted out for you by the embassy. There are several orientations. If you're successful, you'd have to go to London pre-departure orientation, which is in the July before departure. And this is where you'd be taught basic Japanese and how to conduct yourself in the Japanese work environment. And that's a 3-day residential in a university campus somewhere. There's a support structure. The support coming from your supervisors at the school. There's also, of course, your JET friends, the foreigners. So there's a lot of support there, but I have to stress you would be responsible for yourself. So you'd have to try and look after yourself. There is the support there, but you might be in a very rural area and you might feel quite lonely. Good salary. The salary is 3.36 million yen, which fluctuates, well, in pounds it fluctuates according to the exchange rate, but it was around £29,000 when I was there. It might be a bit less, but depending on the exchange rate. These are lots of skills that you'd be acquiring working in Japan. You might not know what you want to do after JET, but you acquire a lot of skills that might help you in your future career. For example, public speaking, working with Japanese people. You said that was quite, Kiko, you said that was quite important if you wanted to work for a Japanese company, to know how to conduct yourself in the Japanese work environment. You'll learn how to work with difficult people. A lot of students might not be as easy as you hope, so you have to be quite persuasive when you're trying to teach them English. And it does increase your employability. Employers are very impressed that you've gone over to a country that's very far away from home, and that you've managed to that you've managed to, work in a foreign country. So we're not looking for one type of person. We're looking for people who represent the United Kingdom. So you could, as long as you are someone who is interested in Japan, someone who's interested in teaching, then it might be something that you want to look into. There are a lot of ex-JET participants in the UK. So you might want to find the JET alumni website and maybe ask some questions from them and see how it goes. The application process, there's 2 weeks left of the application process, but you might want to think about applying for the 2014 intake. And sorry, I have to get through this very long presentation, but how long do we have left? 2 minutes. So, are there any questions that you would like to ask? Yes. There is no age limit for it. But generally, if you're over 40 years old, it might be difficult for you, for an applicant who's over 40 years old, to find a place in Japan. The reason for this being that a lot of Japanese teachers are quite young. They might be very recent graduates who are maybe 22. So if you're over 40 years old and you're an assistant to this teacher, the age gap isn't something, there's a cultural barrier in the sense that a very young supervisor would not be very comfortable supervising an older person. But there is no age limit. You are welcome to apply if you're over 40, but that's something that we ask people who are over 40 to be aware of. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to show you the schedule. The schedule is, well, it's not on here, but the schedule is that the deadline is the 30th. Sorry? Okay. The website, as I said before, is www.jet-uk.org. This is not it. This is not it. Sorry, jet, J-E-T, hyphen, UK.org. That is the website for the JET program UK. If you're a UK citizen, you have to apply through the JET program in the UK. And if you're Australian or American, you have to apply through your respective embassies. Is there time for the last question?
We should probably call it a day.
Hang up. All right. So, thank you very much. I am still here until 6 p.m. We have a booth just over there. So if you have any questions, please come to our stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Philip. I'm a former JET myself, and I can testify that some of us do indeed find true love on the JET programme. She was actually my boss when I was working for Kyoto government, but that's another story. Okay, so one more big hand for Kiko and Philip, please. Thank you. And as Philip mentioned, he'll be in the room next to the main hall, together with Kiko. Philip